like to
All right.
introduce yourself, Lisa. Tell me who you
Yeah.
are and where you work.
I am Lisa Scott. I am co-founder, general counsel, and chief administrative officer at Synota, Inc. And we are a lightning technology company. And yeah, I have multiple titles because I'm doing a lot of the back office, which has turned out to be even a bigger job than I thought, with compliance and regulatory, and there's a lot of accounting aspects to our solution, and a lot of gray area in the legal and accounting space that we're figuring out. So a lot of opportunity for me to
Amazing.
make the most of those titles.
So I was really interested in your career history. So I guess to tell people the backstory, somebody connected with me on LinkedIn, and he was running, and I forget his name now, but I know I did share it with you. I've just forgotten it now. And he was running a
Yes.
podcast, and I asked him, do you know any women in the space that I could interview? And he said, oh, well, the only one I know is Lisa Scott. So, so I reached out to you and said, can I interview? And you were like, well, I haven't done a podcast before. And I was thinking, well, that's interesting. But then we figured out that he knew Austin and he'd interviewed Austin, and that was your co-founder.
Right.
So that was how we had
Yes.
ended up coming around. So I was really interested to talk to you because you're building a company in the lightning space. And I think that this is like probably the most exciting space in Bitcoin right now. And it also has, I think, the least amount of awareness to a certain extent in TradFi, in the general payments industry, like across the globe. So I thought what you guys were doing was really fascinating. And for context for other people, you've been founded by Jeff Booth and Andy Pitt's organization, Ego Death, sorry, funded, I should say. Did I say founded?
Yes.
Funded
Yes.
by Ego Death Capital, which is Jeff Booth and Andy Pitt's organization. And it's interesting because from what you say on your website, you're focused very much on mining and the energy industry, but actually I think we discussed in quite a lot of detail, there's much bigger implications for Lightning, not just in general, but also in terms of the context of what Synota is doing as well. So I was really curious just to get some backstory on you, because your background is really interesting. It's very kind of, standard corporate in some ways. You've got a lot of tax roles that you've done throughout your history. So can you just talk a little bit about your education journey and your career journey before you ever came to Bitcoin?
Yes. So I Michigan State grad, accounting. I got my CPA, went to law school, and loved law school. It was very interesting, but didn't want to practice law. So at the time, I went into public accounting, and in public accounting, I got put randomly in the indirect tax group. So mostly state and local sales and use tax, which probably no one plans to do, but it was such a great opportunity for me because there's all the states, there's a lot of different rules. There was a lot of memo writing and research. And then because sales and use tax is imposed on everything, we buy and sell, it's an interesting area of tax where you're really closely working with operations and attorneys and contracts. And so I went from public accounting, and I spent the last maybe 12 years at a utility infrastructure construction company, doing indirect tax for the folks there. So we built power lines and pipelines. And so, yeah, it was a great company. It's been an awesome career. I think sales and use tax is really interesting. And it was a very secure corporate job. But I'm like loving work every day as a startup founder. It's so exciting. Even Saturdays and Sundays when I'm working, I'm excited. So it's been really great. It was nice to have a secure corporate job and for a great company, but being a startup founder has been a lot of fun, and in a very new space, which just means it's even that much more exciting. Yeah.
It was funny because I was saying this to you before, that it's funny. It's like it's all corporate, and then suddenly, boom, founder in like one of the most,
Yeah.
I think we would agree, the most innovative space in technology. So it's kind of wild that your background looks so conventional, and then it's just like boom,
Yeah,
amazing.
I think that it's been a huge adjustment, but not as big maybe as some people think, because we've approached founding this company from a very, like, from day one, we want to be compliant and scalable, and we want our customers to have confidence that we know what we're doing, and we want just to really serve the industry by, I mean, just promoting, like, I guess they're corporate-y things, but they're things that give a lot of security to customers and investors. And so we definitely we're all kind of corporate-y, and we got feedback in the beginning that maybe we were too corporate-y. But it's worked out, and I know what that means. We use Microsoft Teams instead of Google or Zoom. And so we get feedback about that all the time. Right. So, but the corporate background has really helped, I think, in the sense of, in this new field, in this new industry, where there's a lot of speculation and stigma, like being able to put forth a product and a solution that meets our corporate customer needs, that's been really important. And it's been a really big part of our sales pitch, is that we are compliant and we're stable, and we're thinking about all the aspects of the business, and not just, going full force into a solution and then thinking about the corporate stuff later. We're really doing it all at once.
So I think it's a good time then to talk about, like, what Synota does. So what's the idea? Well, how should we broach this? I think maybe, can you give a quick, like, couple minutes explainer maybe of what the Lightning Network is for people that don't understand it? And then we can talk about why Synota is building on the Lightning Network and what you guys are building.
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that I think a lot of people have an orange pill story. I really have just like a lightning strike story. I understood the value proposition of Bitcoin. It's clear as you start learning more about banking and currency politics and all of that, it's clear the value proposition. And any new technology, really, it brings opportunity and access and innovation. But I think what the Lightning Network does for Bitcoin is it takes all the benefits of it, and then it allows transactions to be cheaper and faster and more secure. So where maybe Bitcoin is lacking that ability to easily transact, which I know because I'm transacting in Bitcoin and it can be complicated, the Lightning Network makes those payments instant. And when you can instantly settle a payment, it's game-changing, really, for accounting, for contracting, and for reducing risk in financial transactions. So what Synota's goal really is to remove the credit risk from energy transactions. So our go-to-market strategy with miners and their hosts, where miners might be considered a risky customer because of the volatility in the Bitcoin price, or just misunderstanding the industry in general, they could often be forced into prepay situations or posting large amounts of collateral to overcome the credit risk from the supplier. And what our vision is that if you sync up the flow of energy with the flow of funds, then you really remove that credit risk. So what Lightning enables us to do is, instead of using your energy and then paying for it 60 days later, you're paying for it as you use it. And so on the Lightning Network, what we've done is we're managing nodes for suppliers and consumers in order for them, and then digitizing their contract so that they can pay for the energy as they go, and it instantly settles.
And so that removes the risk for the, sorry, I was just going to say that removes then the risk for the energy supplier if they have a customer that they think, oof, I don't know if that customer is going to be able to pay. If they each have a Lightning node and you're digitizing that contract and then doing the payments instantaneously, they don't have to wait that 60 days and wonder if the miner is going to go bust and suddenly not be able to compensate. Right.
Exactly. And it's really a win-win, because if you can reduce that risk to the supplier, then that also allows the miner, to not have to post collateral or not have to have higher prices to compensate for a potential risk of them not paying in the future. So we see the value proposition being that when everybody can be on the Lightning Network and payments for energy can flow as quickly as the energy flows, then there's not that risk that's associated with the cash lag and the bad debt. And so when you pay it really pay as you go. I mean, our solution today is daily. I think you can actually read a meter every 15 minutes. So maybe someday, long
Hmm.
term, we're paying every 15 minutes. But for
So
the Lightning
in
Network,
essence, you could move to 15 minutes at some point if that is supported.
yeah, so the key to our solution is that the payments between the two parties are automated based on a source of truth. So we digitize the contract terms between the parties. And then as long as we have access to that source of truth, the payments are automated. So in our situation, in some of our current pilots, the source of truth is just the consumption. So the meter read. So how many kilowatts did they use? What's the price? And then the payments are automated. It's completely touchless. And it's based on both parties' agreement to their power contract or their hosting agreement, and then that actual energy usage.
Hmm. How does that work today then? So can you describe the status quo? So if I was a Bitcoin miner, let's say, and I go to my local energy company and I say, I'm setting up a mining site here and I'd like to buy energy, what's the headache that they have to go through? Or how would that payment process work currently versus on a Lightning network?
Yes, I think we've seen a lot of variation in how that works today.
Oh,
I
really?
think that because it's such a new industry, the payment process is very manual. A lot of Excel, pulling data from maybe a couple different sources or 3 different sources, putting it together in Excel, and then using ACH or check to pay. And then often there's a lot of reconciliations after the fact, right? Like, oh, actually, there was this much downtime, so you get a credit, or credits for demand response, or just inaccurate readings. So there's a lot of reconciliations, and it probably takes, well, I can't even guess how many hours it takes to actually finalize the
Right.
payments. But if you're a host and you have multiple miners on your site, that's a lot of work, to get all of that data together, the invoice, and then also to collect it. So instant settlement on the Lightning Network, we're not only creating the invoice, calculating the bill, it also automates the payment. So you're also not trying to collect money days later, weeks later, months later. It's happening simultaneously, like everything happens in seconds.
That's incredible. Why is it that that can't be done on today's payment rails, though? Is it just because you don't have, like, I'm playing devil's advocate here. So if you could digitize a contract as it exists today, what's the impediment to having like existing payment rails do a payment instantaneously?
Right. Well, I think the biggest impediment is that Visa, for example, is not open source. They're not going to let us build a software on top that gets the actual usage data and automates that payment, right? So the most important, well, not the most important, but an important factor of building on Lightning is that it's open source, and there's no other that I'm aware of payment rails that are as secure, and as cheap and fast that you can build on.
Wow.
But then also with because they're not peer-to-peer, other payment networks, they always have to flow through a centralized or maybe multiple centralized banks, right? So, a lot of people think, for example, like Venmo's peer-to-peer because I could just send you money, right? But really it's going to my bank, and then my bank is going to your bank. And then, so there's multiple centralized financial intermediaries in those transactions. But with the Lightning Network, you're eliminating all of that. It is truly just me paying you based on a source of data that we have agreed to already. And we were able to
Wow.
build the software just by the nature of the Bitcoin blockchain and Lightning Network.
It's incredible. So how does somebody on board, like if a company wants to onboard with you, so if I'm a Bitcoin miner or I'm any kind of energy, because I think we discussed this before, really, like your system, I know that it lends itself very well to Bitcoin miners, but anybody that's an energy consumer theoretically could use it, right?
Yes, that is our long-term goal, is that the entire energy economy is using the Lightning Network. There's the obvious relationship between energy and Bitcoin, right? But then it's also just, if every energy source and every energy consumer and all the parties in between are all on the Lightning Network, the flow of the money is totally synced with the flow of the energy, and it just reduces all the risk in the transactions, and it allows for more like localized pricing and like really getting to the true value of energy. So
Mm.
our future state is that even I'm paying my energy bills on the Lightning Network. And from a residential customer, there's so many benefits too, because when I pay my energy bill today, I'm paying one party who's paying another party, another, there might be 3 or 4 companies in the value chain. On the Lightning Network, I could pay all of them at the same time. So those companies that are 6 months down the value chain could be paid at the same time. And so the cost savings there, it could reduce the cost of energy. I mean, we're estimating 10% just based on the cost of bad debt and cash lag and the cost of borrowing and bank hops. All of those fees really add up. But today we've gone to market with a solution for Bitcoin miners and their hosts or their suppliers. One reason for that is because the miners are able to pay in Bitcoin. So our solution today, they will fund their Lightning node straight from their pool. And then the supplier's node will automatically pay out to an exchange account so that they can get USD. So the off-ramp today, is much more established. The on-ramps, as far as wanting to pay, we want the solution so that anyone can use whatever currency to pay. It just gets converted to Bitcoin in order to utilize the network. But today that on-ramp isn't as well developed and it's not as fast. So going with Bitcoin miners first alleviated that on-ramp issue, which I think there's a lot of companies working on that. But also we are eager just to support that industry.
Yeah.
As a team, we just see the benefits of mining for renewable investments and energy access. And so we just really want to support miners. And they also have a lot of off-grid and on-grid operations. And off-grid we're also going live more with an off-grid solution as well.
What does that mean?
Just the difference between the power source and so a lot of the on-grid, you would be dealing with the utility that might have might just be a longer sales cycle and a harder time onboarding to the software. Whereas off-grid or with hosts or suppliers that purchase the energy and then resell it, it's at this point for our early pilots just easier to onboard.
When you say off-grid, does that mean that theoretically, like when you're talking about retail customers one day being able to use this system, like let's say I've got solar panels on my roof and I'm connected to Synota and, I generate some excess power that I don't need. Does that mean that in theory, I could seamlessly provide that power to anybody else on your network to be able to consume and pay me for?
Well, they would have to be, so the way solar panels work, as I understand, is that they're automatic. They are connected to the grid through your home if you were to put them on. And so I think that the issue with solar panels is that you really can only sell it back to the utility at this time. But if you were able to hook your solar panels up to another source that's consuming the energy, then and there are regulations about this, so I don't think you can even do that everywhere. But if you could, then yeah, absolutely. Our software would facilitate that settlement without a problem. But there's the utility industry is very, in some spaces, very regulated, and on-grid transactions are very regulated. But that's another reason why we see a lot of opportunity, because there's so much data about consumption and the actual cost of consumption. And there's a lot of data that could incentivize consumers in different ways to use their power in different ways or at different times. And consumers don't really have access to that data, definitely don't have access to it in real time. So using Synota, the energy data that the nodes are utilizing to settle that payment becomes those users' data. So the consumers then would have a real-time look at their consumption and the cost of that consumption. Instead of waiting, for that bill shock in 30, 60 days, you would know right away. And the incentives from that can vary, maybe use less energy because your bill's getting high, or so yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve pricing of energy. and then also just incentivizing consumers in different ways.
Yeah, God, that's really fascinating. So I guess it'd be a good time. You say you don't have an orange pill story, but I think that's actually one of the most fascinating things, because it's like you haven't come at this from the angle of somebody who's a hardcore Bitcoiner. So I guess, how did you find out about Bitcoin? What was your early learning like, and what convinced you to give up your secure corporate job to go and found a startup in this space, despite not being kind of an obsessive Bitcoiner at that time?
Yeah, so I think that the stories actually are really different. They don't, they're not related almost at all, to be honest. So, Austin, our CEO, and also my brother introduced me to Bitcoin. It was during COVID, and there's times like COVID that make you maybe more curious about how the government works, or how current,
Right.
how money works. And so I definitely was asking more questions at that time. Just, I mean, as a hobby or as a side conversation. And so I think I bought my first Bitcoin and kind of messed around with it on Coinbase, and just continued learning. I listened to a Michael Saylor and a Jeff Booth podcast, and I signed up for Twitter, although I don't use it, but there's a lot to learn. And I think my Bitcoin journey and understanding that value proposition is just a long one, because to understand the true value, I mean, Caitlin Long is a good example. I mean, understanding more about banking and what I've learned from reading like her LinkedIn posts has only grown my appreciation for Bitcoin. I could have never appreciated it today, like before, like I do today after learning more about banking, right? So there's just something to understanding more about the current way things are before I could really understand the value of Bitcoin. That's not to say I didn't think it was exciting, and I definitely understand the future of the technology, and what opportunities that opens up. But it was hard to use. So starting the company and founding the company was just, I don't know, just an exciting move. It was for family. I saw the opportunity to support Austin in his journey, and he had a really great idea, and a great group of people have been supportive of us and supportive of him, and I've learned a lot from them. So being a part of the team just was an awesome opportunity. And after 15 years of doing tax, I just was excited to like try all this different stuff. I mean, I'm doing payroll and HR, and I'm also getting to bring knowledge that I did learn in all that corporate time, so I think there's some value to being the maybe less orange pill person on a team. I think sometimes I can be the voice of, the non-adopter yet. Like, okay, we want to drive adoption for Lightning and for Bitcoin. Like, so they're all on board, right? But like, I kind of bring maybe that other perspective sometimes, and bring some insights that maybe like we're not always a part of the conversation, because we're also enthusiastic about what we're doing. But sometimes you have to like look at it from the cynical or from the other perspective, to just really see like, what are we driving value here, and how are we doing it? And is it going to appeal to non-enthusiasts, So,
Yeah, it's like a healthy
but yeah,
skepticism that you bring.
yeah, that's what just trying to bring just some different perspectives. This team is phenomenal. It really is. At Synota, like we have energy experts, Austin and Alan, and tech experts that have just explained so much to me about like the value of the technology. I've learned a lot about energy. We have a professor from Dane on our team who's taught us so much about, energy access, and really where there isn't a lot, and how we can change that. So joining the company has just been an exercise, an adventure, I guess, and I've really enjoyed it. Ironically, I'm probably the one person at the company that has to use Bitcoin regularly. So to pay contractors, to buy things, I'm the one doing the banking and setting up the exchange accounts. And it's difficult. honestly, it's not easy. There's so much room for improvement in
Wow.
using Bitcoin in day to day. So that's adding to my my orange pill journey too, because it's complicated. It's not easy.
That's
It's an
interesting though,
untapped.
because I guess in that context, then you have a lot of empathy for your customers if they're having to use it. I mean, a Bitcoin mining company is probably quite well kind of, I guess, educated on the process, but it's interesting that you're having that experience in running your own company to have to really understand the details and the mechanics of how it works.
Well, even miners have decisions to make without a lot of guidance. Like if, just thinking about their mining rewards, right? Like doing that pool reconciliation is difficult, and figuring out then, okay, did all my pool revenue get to my wallet, get to my Excel spreadsheet, and then what exchange rate do I use? Do I use when I was awarded the revenue, or when it was confirmed on the block, or can I just use the end of the day? I mean, there's a lot of complications out there, but in the industry, and we might, I hope that our solution brings like a little bit of consistency and certainty there. I mean, maybe not legal certainty, like this is the way to do it, but I think bringing consistency and transparency to Lightning transactions and Bitcoin transactions is just really important to adoption of it as a means for settling.
So have you had quite a steep learning curve in the tax aspect as well, of understanding how it's treated from a tax perspective and what those implications are? Like you say, are you calculating it from, when you receive the Bitcoin, when you sell it, when was it like you say, when it was written to the block, which time span are you taking? Has that been quite complicated?
It's funny. I think it's funny because it's complicated, but there's like not a lot of guidance. So it's every time I'm like, okay, I really got to research this again. It's like the same articles come up and there's nothing new. So it is complicated, and then it's not, because there's not like some huge rule book to follow. You kind of just you're really trying to fit this new technology and this new means of transacting into really old rules and guidance, and actually had a lot of that experience in sales tax, because it was kind of the same thing, state by state. The sales tax rules on software were written for when you put a CD into your computer, and now there's all the subscription software. And so is that taxable? It's not, you can't hold it, right? But it is software. So I think that's kind of a story that we see all the time with new technologies, is it takes longer for the rules to catch up. So
sorry, I'm just laughing when I think
the
about what you were saying, because I was just thinking about that Elizabeth Warren video that just came out recently, and she was saying Bitcoin has no value because you can't hang it on a wall like you can a painting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Can you hang a song on a wall? No, like it's just, you have to see like the future. I mean, that is what I love about Bitcoiners, is they see a future that is exciting and has a lot of possibilities, and is not constrained by our current understanding of how things work. I can't believe she said that.
Well, I just thought it was funny because I thought
no end.
I was like, by that measure, I think I put a tweet out or something. I was kind of like, by that measure, you would say like a road has no value because it's not backed by anything. I don't know, like the internet has no value because it's not backed by anything. And I think that's maybe a thing that people struggle to wrap their heads around with Bitcoin, that it's a protocol, there's a monetary aspect to it, it's a payment mechanism, it's a historical record, it's an immutable ledger. Like it's so many things because its applications are so broad. And it's a bit like, I'm sure if we had gone back 50 years and tried to explain to somebody what the internet was going to look like in the future, they would just look at you like you were crazy and be like, But, people did see that when the technology came out. They were like, oh, I can see how this is going to develop. But they maybe didn't know everything that would get layered onto it. So I feel like with the Lightning Network, it obviously wasn't an initial Bitcoin invention, but as a layer 2 technology, it's opened up the possibility of scaling Bitcoin in a way that I'm sure people didn't imagine 10 years ago. Maybe some people did. But, you know, here we are where we've suddenly got this super efficient, instantaneous payment network that is open to everybody. I mean, that's the aspect as well that just blows my mind, is like the financial inclusion aspect. There is no other technology. And I know they try and pimp out CBDCs and say, oh, it's about financial inclusion. It's not, because it's centralized and somebody controls it and somebody has to decide if you can be part of that. The crazy thing about Bitcoin is that I can send money to somebody I've never met with a QR code on the other side of the world. And I never have to
Yes.
meet them. I don't have to have any documentation. I don't have to trust them, know them, care about who they are. I mean, it's genuinely incredible. And I think actually on that point, I really wanted to talk to you about the work that you guys are doing in Africa as well, because you're not just limiting yourself to the US. I think you have a really interesting project that you're working on there. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, it's really exciting because just to your point, like I, I donate money to, I don't know, like World Vision, to charities and stuff. And um this, what you can do with Lightning Network is like donate it directly to someone who needs it, right? And not like through an organization and through a bank and
Yeah.
all that. So what we're doing, and this has been a really educational, a really interesting journey. So I think I mentioned one of our, a member of our team is a professor at Dane, and he's worked his whole career like serving underserved communities, low income Black and brown communities, and he has connections in Africa and in other countries in the region where they just don't have a lot of energy access at all, right? There's like 1 billion people in the world that don't have access to reliable energy. And for all the talk of conserve, like that's not an option. Like innovation, like the future depends on using energy. And so we have to develop it, and we have to develop it, smartly and as clean as possible. But there are regions where they could have power sources, but no one's going to build there because the investment payback is too long, or it's so remote and there's not enough load to get it off the ground, and not enough like immediate need, because the need has to build over time, right? So
Right.
I think there's a lot of people working on this where like bringing mining to those microgrids in underserved countries, it brings the investment payback period much quicker, and it allows for there to be load on that microgrid sooner. And then you can always move the miners when everybody has things to charge, right, in the community. But what we want to do is we want our software to enable that as well, and to be a part of folks here investing in energy and mining in those countries. Because like you said, with Lightning Network, I don't have to pay the exchange fees. I don't have to go through all the steps of banking to get money to those people that need it. And so one project we're working on is a school in Africa where we can actually just pay their meter bill through our software. So our software will integrate with the meter there, and we can just pay for their energy usage. And so it's just such a direct benefit, and it's tied directly to their energy consumption, which obviously we're in energy, we're in the energy space. So we wanted to do that. But I think it'll be a model for a lot of ways to support and invest in communities.
So when
using
you
the
say
Lightning
pay their meter bill, do you mean literally just give a donation, or is the structure that you put Bitcoin miners there and you mine Bitcoin and the revenue from that subsidizes their energy bill?
So that is definitely one way to do it. And I think that is going to be a big factor in investing, going through mining that way, because that mining revenue can definitely support investment. But with our software, we just can directly pay that bill, because our
Right.
software will integrate with the meter. And so it will just automate payments from our node to their node. And so we are directly paying that bill. We're not going through it. There's no other steps. It's just an automated payment.
That's really interesting. Why are you testing that then? Are you just doing that because you want to do some charitable work, or is there also like a broader strategic reason for doing that, where you're basically seeing if you can make it work in that region and then expand?
Yeah, the charitable side of it has been there since the beginning. This has been like a mission of our team since the very beginning, is like, how do we support energy access, like early on, it was just like abundance. There's an energy abundance. How do we get it to everybody? We get it cheaper, we make it more accessible. And so we just think our software can do that by making the payments more direct and making them more efficient and lower cost. So there's definitely the charitable aspect for sure. But it definitely demonstrates the use of our software globally, and the use of it in the microgrid scenario, which is different than we don't really have that in the US, right? So here we're proving it using sort of different electrical and power infrastructure. But really, we just want to show that Bitcoin and Lightning and mining can really serve the energy needs and serve renewable investment. That it's not a drain, it's not a drain on our resources. It actually promotes them and it benefits people. So
that's fantastic. That's really such an interesting project. It's such a great proof of concept to do as well, because I feel like so many people would be incentivized to do what you do then and just do direct payments and support projects directly, like you say, rather than going through multiple parties or charitable organizations and that kind of thing. That's incredible.
I hope so. Because I think it could be really, really rewarding. And I just love not losing 20% of your payment off the top on exchange fees so.
Yeah, definitely. Can you talk a little bit more broadly as well about, because you're focusing on, I guess, the Bitcoin mining industry, and then you're obviously doing this experiment, just paying somebody's bills directly. Do you see any other applications for your software sort of beyond that, like in terms of maybe businesses that operate currently that just would be able to leverage it as is, or obviously without sharing anything confidential about your roadmap, but other kind of use cases you might see?
Yeah, I mean, it does come up a lot, because there's so much opportunity with the Lightning Network. And so it's like, wait, how else can we use this? So we actually, just for fun, for practice, we actually pay one of our advisors with our software. So the key really to automating payments on the Lightning Network or through our platform really is just having that source of truth and that digitized contract. So our energy vision, right, is that the source of truth is the meter and the contract is the PPA. But with our advisor, the contract was just a fixed monthly fee, which we just divided by 30 for the month, 31 for the month. And then the source of truth was the number of days in the month, essentially, and the fee. So yeah, I mean, as long as there's an agreement between the counterparties and there's a source of truth, you can automate any payment. So we're energy experts largely. And I mean, I'm not as much as Austin and Allen, but that is like our space. And that's where we see so much opportunity. But I think that what we learn from automating those payments on the Lightning Network, because there's a lot of complications to it, and what we've learned through it, I think can be applied to any scenario. Anyone who wants instant payment, and the accounting benefits, the credit risk benefits, as long as there's a source of truth and an agreement between the counterparties, it can be done. And I think it can serve every industry. I don't see a lot of limitations to it. I don't see any limitations to it. I think that we have to wrap our head around some of the sort of the black box things of the Lightning Network, where, like, for example, channel opening and closing fees, they're not predictable. They're pretty low, but we can't guarantee it to a customer like, oh, these are going to be your channel opening and closing fees, because it varies.
Right.
And, we can't, you don't know the route you're going to take and the transaction's going to take, so there's certain things about the Lightning Network that are not easy to control. And so as long as you can be comfortable with those variables and understand the reason, the technology behind them and the benefit of them, then I think any transaction can be settled that way.
When you do like your kind of sales pitch, then I guess with the miners, you don't have to walk through this because they understand it very well. But when you're talking to the energy companies, then do you just kind of whiteboard that and show them and say, this is how the system works and here's how it would change what you're currently doing?
Yeah, pretty much the focus is cash flow. So today you're either in a prepay and then you're having to do a bunch of reconciliations, or you're in a post pay and you're not getting paid for 30 days or more, maybe 60 days, right? And you're having to go out and collect. So our sales pitch is the cash flow, the removal of the credit risk, which we've talked a lot about. And then also just really the efficiency of the accounting. So at first it seems like a really big deal. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have 31 invoices this month instead of one. But then you ask yourself, like, well, why do you need 31 invoices? You can still enter it into your accounting system as one cash receipt and one revenue entry, because it's not like you created 30 invoices that didn't get paid. They were instantly settled. And so really what you got was what you can do is just have a statement and tie it out to your bank records, and you've eliminated accounts receivable. You've eliminated, cash application reconciliations. So it seems really ominous at first, like the instant settlement and the big change to your accounting processes. But I think when companies get comfortable with the concept of the back office efficiencies that are created, it's a really enticing opportunity to get a little bit like leaner, get that cash flow expedited, gives you more money to invest. And there's a lot of utilities that are moving to prepay. Some of them call it pay as you go, but it's really prepay, right? Because you have to pre-fund your account and then you pay as you go. And they found largely that customers appreciate it because they have more insight and they like to know how much money they like to know ahead of time how much money they're going to spend.
Right.
And it's reduced bad debt expense enormously, because there's none of that bill shock. And the customers are more aware, of what they're spending. And so anytime we're pitching to suppliers anywhere along that value chain, whether it be brokers or the transmission companies or the generators, they see huge opportunity from that expedited cash flow. So
Yeah,
that's the main pitch, is like,
I was
don't
going to
worry about the
say
Bitcoin, just going to get your money sooner.
you're exactly right though, because I think this is the thing. People hear Bitcoin and Lightning Network and they go, oof. And really, like you say, what you're doing is pitching a much more efficient cash flow system and the freeing up of your resources as a company, so you can invest your money in other things rather than kind of waiting for bills to be paid that may never get paid.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
I
those
think,
costs, like, you can't, it's hard. It's hard as a consumer to understand how those costs are part of your price that you pay for electricity, but they are. If your electric company isn't collecting from all the customers and they're having to borrow money at really high interest rates, I mean,
right.
those costs are in what you pay, right? So it serves everybody to eliminate that from the whole settlement in the economy, because that just reduces the cost and it makes it more efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Can you touch on the privacy aspect as well? Because I think that's actually a big key of your software as well, and just the data management, data ownership, and how customers kind of visualize that and access that, and who has access.
Right. So the data aspect is, I think, interesting from two scenarios. The first is that every node has a associated database on AWS, and that's where all of your transaction data is stored. So all of your consumption data, all of your payment data. Now, today, consumers largely don't have access to that data without reaching out to their supplier and requesting it. And in some scenarios, that's not so easy to get, and you don't even have a way to really test the accuracy, right? So that's the first unique aspect, is that you have your own access to the data and it's just yours. And it's on the cloud, which for utilities is a big deal, because a lot of them have so much data, they're actually having issues getting it supported on the cloud versus like on their servers on site, so it instantly solves that problem. But yeah, privacy it's a big part of the Bitcoin ethos. And so it's been a big part of our vision at Synota as well. And so we actually don't store any of the customer data. Right now, our process is very high touch for onboarding. So obviously there's a lot of discussions, but our long-term vision is that you can just onboard yourself to Synota and start using it. And so essentially the consumer node and the supplier node hold all the data. Our software is almost like a wrapper on that tells those nodes, okay, here's the digitized contract terms. Here's where you go to get the meter data, do the calculation, send the money or receive the money, right? So that's all stored on their nodes. And this is a completely non-custodial solution. So we don't have access to the nodes, the funds, the data, nothing. And so it's totally private. They have their own access to the data. They can access, we have created a front end that they can use to access the data on their node. That's part of our managed solution because not everybody is able to operate a Lightning node today, right? So we spin the nodes up, we give you the access, and you can see the data through our front end, or another way if you want, we can send it to you another way, or create APIs for you to access it another way.
Right.
But yeah, so we will have no access to customer data, and we won't store any of it. All we see is the volume of dollars that is flowing. And that's how we're able to charge our fee for the software, and how we're also just able to understand what the liquidity needs are on Lightning Network. So since we're opening and closing the channels, we are managing the liquidity there. And so we have a node that has liquidity on it, and we can pass that liquidity back and forth to keep the channels open when needed. So that's why we have the transaction volume, the dollar volume, but all the other data is proprietary to the customers.
That's just incredible. It's incredible how many things that one piece of technology is solving in one hit. It's wild.
It is wild.
So
And
wild.
it's like you said before, it's overwhelming. And that's why people maybe are like, wait, is it a currency or is it a data solution? Like what is it? And why do I need it? Like how does it impact my life? And I understand those questions, because you could probably in your day-to-day be just fine not thinking about Bitcoin one time, right? I mean, that just happens. But when you start to realize the impact it can have in so many scenarios, it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's mad. I mean, I do think it's a bit like that thing, like most of us couldn't, code a website or program, anything really on the internet, but we use it every day constantly because it's just evolved to a point where the user interface is so easy. And I feel like we're kind of at that stage now with Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, where actually the usability of it is really starting to become apparent. And it kind of brings me to another question, really, because I just think the Lightning Network is such a phenomenal invention. And I feel like there is very little awareness of it out there in the broader, kind of ecosystem, just in TradFi or in business in general. Like, why would you encourage others to build on the Lightning Network? And what do you think the reasons are for this sort of lack of adoption? Like, is it just not people not knowing about it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I went to like one of the largest fintech conferences a few months ago, actually like right after our seed round, and the word crypto and exchange everywhere, even companies that you wouldn't think were in that space, because you had your traditional banks and you had all your traditional payment processors and all of that, your credit card company, everybody was there, and they all had like crypto, maybe a talking point, if not a solution or not some sort of connection to it, right? A lot of crypto. Nobody was talking about Lightning. I would tell people, oh, I'm working on the Lightning Network, and they had not heard of it. And they had heard of Bitcoin, obviously, but they didn't understand the differences between crypto and Bitcoin, and
Yeah.
the number of people that were like, oh, can you build your software on our blockchain? And I was like, no, I mean, that's not even an option, just technology wise, right? Like it's not as interchangeable as that. Like it just isn't. Now, not to say that there won't be, I know there's talk of Lightning Network being able to handle different cryptocurrencies and different, I think there's a word for it, right? Taro maybe is working on it, but.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I think there's some. I'm the wrong person actually I'm not on top of all of these things. I hear them and it's interesting and I think, oh, that's probably on a roadmap. And then I don't get on Twitter enough to follow up. But so I thought that was really interesting. That was like my main takeaway when I came back. I told the guys, I was like, nobody talked about Lightning at this whole conference. It was
I-
mind blowing to me.
I've got to be honest, actually, I think some of that is by intent. I mean, I went to a conference last year and Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, was speaking. And he made a comment, it was right before the merge when they moved to proof of stake. So they were moving the Ethereum blockchain from proof of work to proof of stake. And he gave this whole speech to this sort of adoring crowd about how, Bitcoin's fine, but it's not scalable. And I was just like, okay, like I know that you
Hmm.
know about the Lightning Network. So this is not a lie you're not ignorant to this. This is a lie by omission. You know exactly what
Yes.
the Lightning Network is, and you know exactly that it solves that scalability problem that everybody was so fixated on, and kind of obliterates any reason really to use any other chain for any kind of transaction, in my mind. And I just thought that was really interesting. So I think there's probably a lot of intentional misinformation that gets spread, because I think the value of Ethereum is just becoming that, or the lack of value, I should say, that Ethereum has is becoming more and more apparent as layer twos get built on the Bitcoin blockchain. They have the security, then they have the decentralization, and now they've got the scalability. And it just kind of obliterates any reason to use any other kind of chain. Like there is no second best, as Michael Saylor says.
Yes. I love when he said that. And I love when he compares energy and Bitcoin. It's great. Yeah, I think some of it is intentional. For sure. I mean, Jamie Dimon gave a big presentation about how important decentralization is, and that's why JPM is the biggest decentralized. And I'm like, that's not decentralization. It's just, yeah. So there's definitely, you're right. I mean, there's definitely some intentional, like not addressing some of these opportunities. But and that's exactly why everybody should be building on Lightning Network, because there's so much to build. There's so much space. And the unique thing about it is so often you think about technology, you think about the internet, like, oh, everyone in the family has got Netflix and their phone plugged in, and now our internet's running slow, right? Like you sometimes think about technology, like the more people using it, like it gets less efficient maybe, or slower or more clogged. But I think Lightning Network is unique in that the more people using it and the more liquidity on it and the more building on it, it actually gets stronger and more reliable and more useful. And so that's really exciting. Like coming from the energy side, we need Lightning Network to be reliable. I mean, we can't have payments not go through and somebody's energy get turned off, right? Because that energy is a life force. So we need the reliability of it. And so the more people that are on it and building on it, I think it just grows stronger and more flexible. And the use cases will grow. There's so many things that they're working on to handle some of the channel and liquidity management to make that easier. And that's really exciting. You won't have to keep so much money on it to use it. And then just, I hope that node operation gets easy, and some of those other things that, you kind of feel like you do have to be a developer to use it in some circumstances. And then the on-ramps, so I think
Definitely.
I know there's so much opportunity there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's interesting because obviously the more nodes you have. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh no, I was just going to say, I was also going to say it's interesting because we can operate totally on the Lightning Network, or we can transition to like one step in the transaction is on chain. Like you can go back and forth between them. So, you're not like, if you need to do an on-chain transaction to loop back funds around, or for some reason somebody's not on it, you can mix and match a little bit.
Do you mean you can do that from your software?
I mean,
okay.
right now that's automated. We've automated that if we need to do an on-chain transaction, that will happen. But like Strike, for example, you can send on-chain or via Lightning to them. So it will be the same. It will be the same with Synota.
Oh, that's really interesting. Wow. Huh. That gives a ton of flexibility. Yeah, it's interesting about the other tokens, actually, what you were saying about them potentially. Actually, I need to look into that, but about them supporting other ones, because they support fiat
Don't ask me any
currencies.
questions. Yeah. I mean, I think somebody explained it to me like, you would sort of package other tokens and currencies in a SAT to track.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the way that I think about other tokens is it's kind of like a blockchain based fiat system. So if you take the existing fiat system that isn't decentralized and you just put it on a blockchain, that's to me really how every other token works. So if you find value in a tokenized system for whatever reason that is essentially fiat based, then it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I just think of these days, I actually think of fiat as just tokens. They're just government issued tokens where the government is essentially saying that they have value in their marketing department and their military. The marketing department promotes it and the military enforces use of it. Yeah, that's kind of how I think of it.
So
It's
then
just like
what
a
are
fiat
credit
token.
cards? So what do you consider credit cards then?
I guess, well, that's just like a lending debt-based system built on the fiat token, I guess. I mean, you
Yeah.
essentially, it's like, investing fiat tokens for yield is just staking, isn't it, really? Like if you put a fiat token into whatever, you're just staking it and hoping that you get a return. So
Yeah.
all of those things I just think are, it's basically the same thing. They've basically rebuilt the fiat system, but on a blockchain and then called it DeFi when it's not.
Basically. And then have really high fees.
Yeah.
You know, really high fees. And that Lightning Network really reduces that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, that's been great. I mean, thank you so much for giving insight into that. I guess, do you have any final words as to any other people out there, women who are thinking about building businesses, as to whether they should go out there, any words of inspiration about building on the Lightning Network?
Oh gosh. Well, I would first say, founding a startup, joining a startup, even if you're not the founder, it's really exciting. And it's been, for me, I feel like this awesome example to my kids of like taking a chance and like you can still learn something new in your 40s, just like feeling really motivated and really happy about work all the time. It's just, honestly, it's a great way to go through life. And I know not everybody has that opportunity, but if you do have the chance to join a startup and learn something new, like it has been really fun and not something that was ever like a goal of mine. I never anticipated that was going to be my path, but I don't think I could do anything else now. It's been really exciting.
Wow.
I think that women should learn more about Bitcoin. It's honestly so much less than learning about the other possible ways to save your money and grow your money. A savings account, you're not really growing your money. I mean, right now, I guess they're 4%, so it's a little bit, but whether that beats out inflation is questionable, right? So, it's a really great way to store your value, to store the value of what you've earned, and so that's very exciting. And then, and it's hard to learn about Bitcoin. It really is if you're not if you don't have people in your life constantly exposing you to podcasts and reading materials. If you want to learn about it, you can email me, and I'll tell you how I learned about it. I won't try and teach you. But yeah, and then building on the Lightning Network, I think it is the future. It's going to take off and it's going to present so much opportunity. So I guess we're just going to stay patient till we figure out all the intricacies of how to make it really smooth and really transparent. And yeah, it's going to take off. It's going to change the way we transact. So
100%. 100%. It's so exciting, so exciting. Do you have any recommendations of like podcasts or people to follow on Twitter or anything like that you think if somebody's interested in learning more about this space that they should go to? Like, do you have any kind of go-to podcasts that you think, oh yeah, that was actually quite helpful for me in my journey?
I mean, definitely my first exposures were like Michael Saylor podcast, the Jeff Booth podcast. Lynn Alden is obviously so smart in this space. But there are I can't think of the names now. There are like 2-minute YouTube videos that explain even just to understand blockchain first and then Bitcoin. You kind of have to build a little bit. Otherwise, it's just like, that's a lot of technology. But I think your LinkedIn is awesome. You post a lot of good stuff. Really, I think it's. I don't know.
I think of it as my daily rant.
I really like, I will say too, like if there's a local meetup, so we have a Columbus meetup, which is actually where Austin met Max, who's our head of technology, and then Colin, our other developer, and where we've just made a ton of connections, like the Ohio Blockchain Council is that connection kind of started there. There's just been a lot of really
Wow.
great people involved in the meetup. And I think a lot of cities are starting to have them. And I will say it can be intimidating at first if you're a beginner and if you're a woman to show up at a meetup. But once you say to someone, I'm a beginner, I want to learn about it, everybody there is willing to teach you, what they know, expose you. I mean, I was like, okay, what app should I use? What I think my first question was like, what app? I already bought this on Coinbase. So now like what app should I move it to for a wallet, to store it? Like, and just tons of resources. And so it could be like sometimes a little technical and overwhelming. But if you just say like, I'm here to learn something, everybody's really helpful. So I think like local meetups are really good. And I hope that they're growing in a lot of cities because ours has been awesome.
That's amazing. Wow, that's really cool. I feel so energized after talking to you. I just feel like it's so exciting and so much to do. And I can't wait to
Likewise.
see I can't wait to see what you guys build. I mean, or are building rather, but just see this kind of proliferate. It's going to be amazing. So thank you so much. I'm hoping that I see you down in Miami. So I think we might actually meet in real life.
I know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I also didn't get into startup space thinking that there would be like communities of women that were so supportive, but definitely experienced that like in banking, in energy, in Bitcoin. There's like so many like
Really?
women groups that really like lift each other up and provide resources. And so
Wow.
that's another thing I didn't know until I entered the unknown of I need to learn a lot really fast. And so
Yeah,
hopefully
that's the
that
great
event comes
thing.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Cool. Well, I shall hopefully see you soon then, and best of luck with Synota. And I think just for everyone, it's synota.io, isn't it?
Yes. synota.io. Yes.
Perfect. So they can visit your website, find you on LinkedIn, Lisa Scott at Synota, find you on Twitter. Is your Twitter public? Do you give that out or no?
It is public. I think it's like, oh gosh, I think it's like Lisa Bit Synota or something.
Okay.
But
And
like Lisa Bit Synota,
what's
yeah.
I know you've got a Synota Twitter handle as well. Is that at Synota or something?
It's at Synota _. I think there's an underscore at the end of Synota.
Okay.
And so maybe that makes it hard to find. I'm not sure. But
Okay. I'll
yeah,
go dig it
I'm
out
trying to be
and
more active on LinkedIn. There's a lot to learn on LinkedIn too. Yeah. Trying to do some stuff there.
yeah, I just read Twitter. I bookmark loads of stuff and I go, one day I'm going to read all of that. I tried actually doing some of it last weekend. I spent like 2, 3 hours just going through my bookmarks, but it's hard. It's hard to keep up. It's like drinking from a fire hose.
It
It's
is.
such an
It
exciting
is.
space, but it's a lot. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
being a forward-thinking, pioneering builder in this space. I think it's just incredible. May many more of you come to being, I guess, in Bitcoin and Lightning. It would be amazing. So yeah, I will see you soon, and
It
thank
will
you again
be.
for your time.
Thank you. Thanks.